Thank you, Madam Master of Ceremonies. Mistress. There you go. I was watching her to see if she would correct me. I would like to accept the protocol, but to use my 3 Fs: fellow St. Lucians, family, friends. Today I want to talk to you about human health, the environment, and sustainable development, the inextricable relationship. And you know, it's an interesting topic that Giles gave me, and I want to recognize UNDP GEF. And I like the byline or the mantra, beacons of light to spotlights of transformation. Because you see, this particular project, this particular office, these particular people, Giles and Ornella, when we speak about revolution, when we speak about reparative justice and the revolution that is necessary for reparative justice in this country, this is what we are talking about. It is quiet, it is silent, it is powerful, it's on the ground, it is grassroots, it's empowering the very people who need to be empowered, who were disempowered by our history, and in fact by our present, as we will talk about. You know, it's interesting that just last week or so, I got a phone call from a distressed parent because a cell phone of a child went off in the school, on a CXC exam. And I remembered 5 years ago, a colleague of mine in the Northern Caribbean, that's happened to his daughter. And CXC canceled all her exams. Because, not that her phone went off, but she had the phone in her pocket, and they found it. And when I looked today, the penalty for having a cell phone in a CXC exam is they cancel all your exams. However, my colleague took CXC to court 5 years ago in Barbados. And he won and got judicial review. And what the judge said was that at all times, the child's rights says the best interest of the child must be served. And therefore, he ruled that CXC was wrong. And that the child, if anything, should only forfeit the one exam in which the cell phone was present. But the oppressor's mind and the mental slavery still exists because CXC has not changed their rule today. You understand? Although the court said differently. But I want to thank you for trusting me. I would say, I'm going to talk a lot about genetics and DNA today, but I'm a mixed-race octoroon, so you have no idea which DNA is going to speak today. I also want to recognize my partner in our Good Food Revolution, Janelle Gabriel, who without her, we would not have achieved what we did achieve. Thank you, Janelle. Not only did we train 30 active organic farmers, not only did we produce some public relations material where our great Dame Paulette Louisi features as one of our stars, we actually also drafted a policy which the Ministry of Agriculture will pass. I can assure you of that. And the other thing is that a spin-off project that we are going to do is create a national students' cooperative in agriculture, which will complement what the teachers are doing. And that is something we'll be through the Ministry of Education, be in contact with you, Giles. Now, this is going to be a song of freedom. Bob Marley, redemption, because it is time for redemption. Now, back in the 5th century, Hippocrates, the father of medicine, here's what he said. If you want to learn about the health of a population, look at the air they breathe, the water they drink, and the places where they live. Nothing new is ever said, has been said today that wasn't said before, you know. Great minds have always thrived and always said what needed to be said. Human health, WHO says, optimal mental, physical, and social health, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Sustainable development is the organizing principle for meeting human developmental goals, while at the same time sustaining the ability of natural systems to provide the natural resources and ecosystem services upon which the economy and society depend. Now, human health. Let's just talk a little bit about that. Our bodies are fantastic, complex, interrelated I don't want to call it machines, but integrated elements. The microbiome, which is a bacteria in our skin, in our respiratory tract, in our intestinal tract. This microbiome has being researched, actively researched now, because we've come to understand that this microbiome is actually interacting with our cellular signaling. It's interacting with diseases such as depression, schizophrenia, autoimmune disorders. You mentioned antibiotic resistance. This microbiome is one of our organs which in medicine we never bothered much with. However, think about it. If we have to manage that microbiome, we have to watch what we eat, watch the chemicals we put in our body, watch how we use antibiotics. Because that microbiome needs to be managed properly if we are going to be healthy. Then, let's look at our cellular interactions. Our body is composed of billions of cells which interrelate with each other and communicate with each other through various signaling. So these cellular chemicals that go across and cause cells to behave in certain ways are vital to cellular health, and of course, cellular health is vital to our health. Even the very way we think is chemical. So, you know, anything that interferes with that chemistry will interfere with the cellular health and cellular machinery and cellular behavior. So are you surprised that not only the microbiome affects our cells, but our nutrition affects our cells, chemicals affects our cells. In fact, thinking affects our interactions. Just merely thinking. And we'll come back to that in a little bit. Genetics, our DNA. We inherit from our ancestors a cellular code which makes our cells behave in a particular way, causes us to look a particular way, a certain phenotype, as we say. It's obviously crucial. Obviously, it's very hard to change, except now, I can tell you, in medicine, we have the CRISPR-Cas9 systems. We can do gene editing now. Do you know we can take somebody with sickle cell, with a point mutation, and we can eliminate that point mutation in utero in the fetus, and we can eliminate sickle cell disease? Yes, it's still at the point of theoretical and research, but soon it will become mainstream. Gene editing. Imagine what we can do with cancers. Imagine what we can do. This is a brave new world. Science is moving on. Knowledge is power. Then we have epigenetics. Now, this is fascinating. Epigenetics is probably the most fascinating arena of health research and our bodies. Epigenetics, which is above the gene, as we would say, is the machinery that controls gene expression. So here we have the gene, and then we have the epigenetic phenomena, which are the histones and the RNAs and so on, that will actually cause the DNA to transcribe, to deliver, to give out the messages. Now, epigenetics is very fluid and very susceptible. Do you know, the studies now are showing that trauma, emotional trauma of our ancestors is encoded through epigenetics back down to us? So, our slave ancestors who were traumatized in a particular way, we have that epigenetic phenomenon in us. And the studies are very clear that this is something that we need to be cognizant of and we need to address. So epigenetics, that whole theory now, I think you should really look at it and we will talk a little bit more about it. So, sustainable development clearly can only happen with wise management of human health and environmental health. Now, the environment, physical environment, that directly is, or the physical environment is directly implicated in 25 to 33% of the global burden of disease. You may ask, what? Cancer. Let me tell you, just across the water, Martinique, chlordicone. Chlordicone is a pesticide that they were using in the banana industry in Martinique. It has been related to prostate cancer. Martinique has actually almost 3 times the rate of prostate cancer of Saint Lucia. Right? Chlordicone is a persistent pollutant in the soil. Chlordicone, they claim, will take up to 500 years to be naturally removed from the environment. Hopefully we'll get the technology to remove it. So you can imagine what those Martinican soils are like. We spoke about Roundup. Glyphosate. I saw that there was an executive saying you can drink a quart of glyphosate and nothing will happen to you. However, glyphosate does interfere with cellular signaling and has been, it's a class 2A carcinogen, has been correlated with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That is why people are winning their lawsuits right now on glyphosate, Roundup. Now, if you think about asthma, if you think about diarrhea, if you think about dysentery, if you think about dengue, Zika, you understand how the environment is playing a role in human health and human disease. Pesticides, garbage, sewerage, indoor air quality. There are some government officials here. Many government offices I see are coming to the labs now asking us through their unions and through their various agencies to test for mold and whatever. So the volatile organic chemicals, CO2 levels, mold, other antigens, people are coming down with various illnesses, itchy eyes, respiratory problems, skin rashes, and so on and so forth. Indoor air quality, physical environment, poor ventilation systems. I want to come back to the same oppressor mentality. In days gone by, you know, we would probably, if we were better thinking, if we would look at better ventilation systems, instead we adopt. Without adapt, we just take. And we don't even think. That's the problem. So the social environment. I want to talk a little bit about the social environment because I mentioned epigenetics. So the psychosocial work environment, by the way, in the sick building syndrome, which many of us are manifesting, not only do you have the physical environment, which is important, but actually the psychosocial environment is also important. Because people get sick because of stress. Chronic stress in the workplace, chronic stress in your life, toxic stress will affect your health. And it will cause, it affects, what toxic stress does, it affects, yes, your cortisol system, it affects the very same cellular chemicals I mentioned to you. It is pro-inflammatory, so it alters the immune system. We have inflammation, so therefore you can imagine asthma, joint pains, autoimmune disorders, cancers, all arise as a result of chronic stress and chronic toxic stress. So it speaks to that social environment. And you know the one that is really near and dear to me? Adverse childhood experiences. Because I'm listening to debates now about crime and violence, and, you know, let me tell you, it's all aces. Not your behavior. When I look at a young person who has committed an offense, I don't see a bad person. I see a bad behavior. I don't say, what is wrong with you, my boy? The question you have to ask is, what has happened to you, my boy? You know? And what you will find, and Dr. Filetti and them found this out, and CDC, and anytime you want to search ACEs, search it, 6 times the risk of substance abuse. 16 times the risk of substance abuse, 6 times the risk of depression, 3 times the risk of heart disease, diabetes, cancer, 15 times the risk of perpetrating violence, 20 times the rate of incarceration, all based if you have 4 or more adverse childhood experiences. What are they? Physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, neglect. How many of our children are growing in that environment? So you see, when we talk about crime and violence today, let us talk about adverse childhood experiences. That is the environment that I speak of. Let us not talk about is it a single parent or not? It is the parenting that is the issue. It is the support for the family. What is the social safety net? What are the workplace policies? What are those issues? Targeting, especially, how do we eliminate adverse childhood experiences? It is said that if we dropped adverse childhood experiences to less than 2, we would eliminate 50% of crime and violence. Now, the only government I know of in this world that I have seen so far that has enshrined ACEs into their policy, and they did so this year, is actually the local government in Scotland. Right? But that is something that in St. Lucia we should be thinking about. The fundamental cure for poverty is not money, but knowledge. Our genius, Sir Arthur Lewis. Our genius. That's a genius statement. Because that tells you what must we do. It's what GEF does. Give our people access to knowledge. Give them knowledge. That is how you're going to eliminate poverty. That is how they are going to walk out of poverty. Because we're not eliminating poverty. People, grassroots people eliminate poverty by working it out, by thinking it out, by being entrepreneurs. Just like what we're doing today, like in Soufriere. So, science and knowledge. Very much more available today and accessible. Right here in this room, you can go on your phone and you can pull down the knowledge. Get the science. And knowledge, of course, should be the basis of decision-making. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King is a spirit I truly love. He says, science gives man knowledge, which is power. Religion gives man wisdom, which is control. Now, when we speak of religion, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King is here talking about ethics and morality. So given the way many religions have become corrupt, and we'll talk about corruption in a little while, I prefer to take out the word religion and put in the word ethics and morality. Because that is what religion should really be. However, many religions are falling by the wayside. But maybe they should reel and come again. So, decision-making should be the application of knowledge through the lens of ethics and morality. Environmental ethics, human ethics. Let's go back, the best interests of the child, the rights of the child. That is how the CXC should make its decisions. And that's how governments should make their decisions. So wise decision-making must be at personal levels. Each of us must make wise decisions based on knowledge, ethics, and morality. Similarly, families, we must make the communities, of course, the society, nationally, and then, of course, globally. But I want you, as I think you are doing now, think about the decisions that you're seeing globally, nationally, in the community, family, and maybe even your own life. And ask yourself a question. Are these wise decisions based on knowledge, science, morality, ethics? These two elements of good decision-making, in my view, you can dispute it if you would like, are sadly lacking in our country, in our communities, in our families, and in fact, in this world. Recent examples. I've been involved in a cannabis debate in this country. And I'm amazed that science and ethics don't seem to carry any weight in the decision-making. Bizarre. And not what it should be in this modern era. I look at climate change debates. Developed worlds backing out. Up to recently, I heard something that the passion, the drive for climate change reparation is failing. CIP in our country. Let's look at that decision. We spoke about the crime and violence. But in contrast, I want to commend on two things. In fact, let me go back to crime and violence a minute. Apart from what we spoke about the issue of parenting, which I think is an important issue. I remember being in the Senate, thanks to Dame Paulette Louisi. I sometimes don't know if I really represent her as well as she would like. But she did tell me, Stephen, talk. So that was nice. Anyway, I remember the anti-gang bill coming into Parliament. And I looked at the anti-gang bill and I said, this thing is not based in science. It's a ridiculous bill. It is a party partisan power political play. It's a gimmick more than anything else. And the whole world knows that, because everywhere where they have this thing, which was first designed in California 20-something years ago, they realize it's a failure. Down to Trinidad, which we borrowed, failure. But yet still we're going to do it. We're not looking at ACEs. We're not looking at, my boy, what happened to you. What we're looking at? Double the punishment. The oppressor mentality again. That European oppressor mentality. That slavery mentality. Lock them up, beat them, shoot them. That is how you control people. That mentality, alive and well, needs to be exercised. But back to commending my government. Honorable Gail Ragobert, corporal punishment. A blow in the right direction. A blow against adverse childhood experiences. Yes, I think that's a great move. We need to do more, mind you, because remember, there's emotional. We must be careful that physical violence is not replaced by emotional violence. So we must be careful. But I want to commend her on that move, because it's sending the right signal. I want to commend her on the move for garbage, styrofoam and plastics. I want to commend that move. This is good decision making. That is morality. That is ethics. And that is science and knowledge at play. Congratulations, madam. I hope everybody else can follow your example. So, why the science and knowledge and ethics not play in decision making? Our brilliant thoughts and words, but not so good deeds. Why? Let's look at our history. Remember epigenetics? Let's look at our history. Genocide. The indigenous people in this region, genocide. Europeans came here and eliminated an entire population of people. The Kalinago and Taino people. They do live in us still with their DNA shouting a little voice. And yes, in a couple of our countries, you do have some of those populations. But effectively, it was genocide, especially in Saint Lucia. The Caribbean Holocaust, the transshipment of Africans, designated by law to be property, not human, and to be treated as such, down to emancipation, where the very law of emancipation recognizes the slaves to be emancipated as property, and therefore the property owners needed to be compensated by the British government, and in fact by the very slave labor that had to continue for another 4 years in an apprenticeship for free. You understand? What do you think that did to us? What do you think that toxic stress in our DNA is doing? Is it affecting our current culture, our current behavior and thinking? Giles put it up beautifully. The Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution was built on the backs of an immoral and unethical regime. That is why when we say the GEF is reparative justice and the revolution, that's what it is. Because, again, the European funds are now being plowed back into this country in a positive way, uplifting the very grassroots. That is reparations. And that's what we need to do. You know, look at our very political system. By the way, the response has to be, teach our children history, as it should be taught, our history, let them know what happened to them, so that they can understand, so they can exorcise that demon from their soul and their mind. Right? Because this is not about white and black people. This is about a people who have suffered, and a people that need reparation in their very spirits, yes, and in their physical lives too. So that is what we have to teach our children, so they can be proud and they can have that identity and they can stand up and say, this is me, this is what happened to me, and this is what I'm going to do from here, and this is what I'm going to demand that you do from here, because I have a right, I have an equal right on this globe as everybody else. Whether you come from the White House or you come from Grass Street, I'm equal to you. And I deserve it. You understand? You're not giving me any favors, I deserve it. That's the point. But look at our political system, handed to us. Because, you know, when after emancipation, things continued. Don't think that the mind stopped you. The colonialism did it too. It continued. And then the political system we have divides us. Somebody called earlier for unity. We have a political system that divides us. We have a religious system that divides us. Who gave us these systems? Who installed them with us? And now we can't let them go? Because the oppressor is in our head, telling us, no, you don't understand. You're not able to be self-determinant. You can't think for yourself. Listen to the master. Listen. Believe. Don't have faith in yourself. Have faith in the master. Let me tell you, to me, this is a no-brainer for me. So what do you need? You need political reform. You need constitutional reform. As a mandatory thing for us to exorcise ourselves from this beast. Look at civil society organization. I heard Amjad talking, lamenting civil society organization weakness. But the truth is, the forces don't really want civil society. The colonial and masters never really wanted civil society. That's an inconvenience. As Al Gore says as well, an inconvenient truth. No. Hey, you hold me accountable? What type of democracy do we have? 5-year democracies? Once every 5 years? Like, I remember a gentleman used to work for my father said, today's the People's Day, Stephen, that we're going to vote. We have 1 day every 5 years. That's not democracy. You know? But that's what they like. It works. Because I can buy it every 5 years, can't I? Yeah. So that needs to change. Look at the current neoliberal corporatocracy. Promotes narrow agendas driven by short-term financial returns. Chemical companies. Buy the Roundup. Buy the Paraquat. Buy the Furadan. That's how you'll have your bananas. We even have our very ministries promoting the very bananas that we know we must use the same chemicals on. Who do the bananas truly enrich? Who do the bananas truly hurt? Is banana farming, as we are promoting it, ethical, moral? Is it right? Why promote it then? Anyway, that's for another debate. Our education system. We have an installed education system. We refuse to change it. Conform. My boy, put your bottom on the chair. Say what I say. Look at me. Don't fidget. Right? We're not teaching the boy or the girl to think, to make decisions, be powerful. Right? So, let's change that. I want to say the GEF example, community action, global impact. This to me is an example of applying science, technology, knowledge in an ethical framework. And that is why it is a revolution, and that is why it is reparative justice. So in closing, I want to leave you best interest of the child. So that took me to the Bible. Isaiah 11, verses 2 to 6. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest on him. The Spirit of wisdom and of understanding, the Spirit of counsel and of power, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. And he will delight in the fear of the Lord. He will not judge by what he sees with his eyes or decide by what he hears with his ears, but with righteousness he will judge the needy. With justice he will give decisions for the poor of the earth. He will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth and the breath of his lips. He will slay the wicked. Righteousness will be his belt, and faithfulness the sash around his waist. The wolf will live with the lamb. The leopard will lie down with the goat, the calf and the lion and the yearling together. And a little child will lead them. Remember the little child, because that's the one that will lead us. That's the one we make decisions for. The future generations, they are the ones we make the decisions for. We live this life in a relay to pass that baton on to the little ones, who will then pass it on to their little ones. That is how nations are built. That is how populations grow. That is development. That is sustainable development. And the great Maasai nation of Africa, what do they say in the greeting? All the children are well. I leave you with that.